hear it for the Peperzak Pumas. All right, we are thrilled to have you here today. I want to thank, obviously, the Ferris Jazz Band. I also want to thank Mr. Lewis, who is up in the sound booth, for helping organize all of this. Mrs. Harrison, who is our leadership teacher here at Ferris, who helped get the cheerleaders. I want to thank them. Some leadership students that helped guide you guys in. So many people to thank for putting this event together. Also want to thank folks from Spokane Public Schools, Ryan Lancaster and his team, and our media folks that are here from the Spokesman Review. Anyways, without further ado, you're here today. This is so special. And I'm really hoping that over the next hour, you are able to really soak in how incredibly special it is to meet your school's namesake, to meet the person that your school is named after. Carla Peperzak is here with me. Give a round of applause for Carla.
Thank you.
The great thing is I don't have to spend a lot of time introducing her because she's about to tell you her story. It is an amazing one. I can't think of a more special and deserving person to name our school after. So the format for today, we're going to sit up and have a conversation. We have a slideshow that goes along with some of the responses that she has to the questions that I'm going to ask her, but it's Q&A. You get to sit back, kind of relax, and listen to Carla tell her story. At the end, we'll have about 15 or 20 minutes to take some student questions. We won't be able to take everybody's questions, but we will get to a few of you, and so be thinking and listening while Carla tells her story so that we can get your awesome questions answered at the very end. When it's time to dismiss, we will go from my right to left. We'll have the Adams folks hang back because they don't have to catch a bus, and we'll get everybody else dismissed. Are you ready? Yeah. Awesome. Carla, are you ready?
I hope so.
All right, here we go. Okay, Carla, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm awfully grateful and happy to see all of you. It is a really very special occasion to see the students. Thank you for doing that.
Of course. It's our distinct honor to have you here.
And we should thank the band from the Ferris High School for the performance.
They are amazing. They were great, weren't they? Yes. Okay, first question. Carla, when and where were you born? And just tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Okay, I was born in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, in 1923, so you can figure out how old I am. And I had one sister. I had a happy childhood. I did like sports, especially water sports. I did a lot of rowing and ice skating in the winter and sailing and everything which had to do with water sports. I also liked school, which is, very, very good. Amsterdam had I should say first, I grew up Jewish. Most of my friends were Jewish, and the school I attended had maybe about close to 30% of Jewish children, though it was a public school. And I think, like I said, I had a very happy childhood.
No,
that's
thank you.
about it.
Thank you. The part that I loved is that you said that you loved school.
Right.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think we have an opportunity to follow your lead.
Hopefully, everybody should love school.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about your experience growing up. The next question that I wanted you to talk about a little bit was about Nazi Germany, right? And so Nazi Germany invaded the Netherlands in May of 1940. Did things change right away?
Not right away, slowly. I was 16 when the German army invaded, and the invasion was about 5 days. And they installed almost immediately a Nazi government. the Dutch government, some of them had, and the Queen and her family had fled to England. And so they mentioned, they said first they would keep the Dutch laws and they would not change any of the rules and regulations, but it lasted basically only a couple of months. So in about September of 1940, they started having measurements against Jewish people. So, and the first thing was that Jewish people had to register, and also the Jewish business had to register. And also by the end of the year, a lot of Jewish civil servants were dismissed from the government. So slowly but surely, and I think the picture here you see, this is taken a couple of weeks after, well, about 2 months after the invasion, and you could see here, this is my parents. We are sitting in a restaurant. By the way, I took that picture. And my sister and her beau, and the young man in the center is actually a cousin. And he, at the time, lived at my parents' home. And later he became very active in the underground. So things didn't change much until fall of that year. So.
Okay. Do we have the picture of the directional signs, Marianne? Can you tell the story about this?
This is the southern part of Amsterdam, and a lot of people, and when the armies, or the German or the Nazis and the army came in, they needed directions, and they would ask the local people for directions. And my sister had a lot of fun when she was asked. They gave them the wrong directions, so they ended up by putting the signs up. And we were at the very end very happy to run those signs down. But those signs were just not for the local people, but for the army to know which direction they had to go.
Thank you. That's funny. Pointing them in the wrong direction. All right, so as most of you know, you've heard a little bit about the Holocaust. Even if you know just a little bit, you know that it was a dangerous and tumultuous time for the Jews. Carla, when did things start to get more dangerous for the Jews in the
Well, actually,
in the
by the end of that year already, and like I said, the Jewish people had to register. And then by the very beginning of the next year, this was in February 41, it was the first time they started to round up mainly Jewish men and young boys. And this was in Amsterdam again. Amsterdam is the capital of the Netherlands, by the way. And though the government was in The Hague and is still in The Hague. Anyhow, they started to round up, and the Dutch people were so upset with this that they went on strike. Everything stopped. Buses, trains, factories, and the Nazis had never expected that to happen. And then they arrested the people who started the strike, and they not only arrested them, they literally killed them. And that was an end to the strike. But so the real bad part started February 1941. So.
Yeah, things started changing.
Absolutely, and then slowly but surely they started, for the Jewish people, they were not allowed to go one of the first things was a movie theater that was close to Jewish people. But then all public transportation was not allowed to be Jewish people. They also started, this is a start, but it'll come later. They also started to have not allowing people in the parks or on museums, anything that was a public affair, Jewish people were not allowed to take part. So slowly but surely, they started to make it very difficult. Also, all radios were confiscated, but the Jewish people's radios were first confiscated. And they had to turn in, a couple of months later, all the bank accounts were closed from Jewish people, all the safety deposit boxes, and a lot of people, lost their job. Jewish people lost their job, and so they did get a stipend, very little to live on. It became very difficult.
So the things that the Nazi Germans started taking away was very strategic. Why did they take away the radios?
Well, they didn't want us to listen to you know, England is not too far from the Netherlands, pretty close actually. So they didn't want us to listen to any broadcast from overseas. I think that was the main reason. And later on, I talk a little bit about, you know, that we still listen to the radios, but in a closet.
So that's up to 1941. 1942 was a pivotal year.
1942 became real. By this time also, the German or the Nazi government had literally decided to get rid of all the Jewish people in Europe, in Western Europe, and their occupied countries, not only Western, but Poland and Russia, you know, at the time part of Russia too. So this was a very conscious decision. And by this time, everybody had a registration, ID as we called it. And the ID for the Jewish people had a J next to the picture. And here is an ID, and I think this is my husband's ID. I still have that. We made a picture of it, but it's, you know, I still have that. Everybody got an ID in 1941. And my father, with the help of an attorney, because my mother was not born Jewish, tried to get for my sister and myself a different ID without the J. That took about a year. But in 1942, I got a new ID without a J. And all that meant also, because the star had, actually every Jewish person had to wear a star by the end of 1941. And there was a picture of the star, and you see me, I'm the second from the right, I think. Anyhow, yeah, no, from the left, right?
Second from the left.
Yeah, second from the left there. And you see me here wearing still the star. But in September 1942, I got my new ID, and I did not have to wear a star. I'd like you to look at those IDs, because I will talk a little bit about them a little later. And because of that I did not have to wear the star anymore, and I got the other ID, I had all of a sudden, life became completely different for me, because now I could go in the streetcars or trains or railroad or buses. I could go in the stores which had been closed for Jewish people. And so I could, you know, had quite a bit of freedom as far as, you know, freedom was not everybody else in the Netherlands. It wasn't really freedom, because everything you did was, you know, watched by the Nazis. But I had, you know, I could walk on the road anymore and could do whatever was needed to be done. And by the way, I was, when the invasion took place in 1940, I was doing my final exams from school. And I intended, which I did, I attended the University of Amsterdam. I wanted to study for medical technology. And then the first thing was that all the Jewish students could not attend public universities anymore, but then also the universities, all the public universities was a little later were closed, because every student had to sign a loyalty declaration to the Nazi government. Most students did not do that, and so the universities were closed by that time. But so I went then to a private school, a private college, and to study medical technology. And then did that for about, it was a 36 months course, and I got my degree, you know, after it was finished. Though I got involved with the underground, and I, many times I missed school and had to do my tests over again, but I managed to pass.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. So born in 1923, 1940 to 1942, you're 17 to 19 years old. So I know that I met Isaac When I came in, Isaac's a senior here at Ferris. How old are you, 18? 17, okay. So around Isaac's age, a senior in high school, Isaac has an awesome plan to become a firefighter. But Carla, you had a plan in your teenage years to become part of the undergrounds.
Well,
Tell us more about that.
It wasn't really a plan. What happened after I got my new ID, an uncle of mine, my father's brother, who had a family from 2 little girls and his wife, like I said, 1942 became very difficult for Jewish people. And many also were taken away from their homes at night, and during the day, and what they call razzias, they were taken. And so those who possibly could try to go into hiding. And so this uncle of mine contacted me and asked if I could find a place for them to go into hiding. And I knew somebody very well, actually, they were neighbors. And I contacted them and I said, do you know, is there anybody, any place they could go into hiding? Anyhow, he got me connected with the right people, and we found a place for them to go into hiding. And here you see a picture of the 2 little ones when they went into hiding. One was just over 2 years old, and the other one, I think, was, no, the little one was less than 2 years, but the older one was about 4 or 4.5. And when you so I found this place for the parents, but could not have the little girls, because you cannot expect in 2.5 years and a 4 years old to live in an attic room and not go outside, and be close. Those who that, and Frank, you know that a couple of years in one room, that was very difficult for. So we found a hiding place for each girl, not the same place, but each one. And then after the war, what happened? Immediately after the Germans gave up, were conquered, the parents came from the hiding place, and the little girl, the youngest we knew also, brought her home, but the oldest one was moved from one home to another, and where she was treated very, very well. She was just one part of the family and was acted as a non-Jewish little girl, so she went to school. But we also had given her a new name, and we really had, before she went to the family, we really tried to pound that name into her mind. And she got that name, but by the couple of years later, after the end of the war, she had forgotten her own name, her birth name. And the parents asked me then if I possibly knew how to find her. Well, I knew where she was in school to start, or where she lived to start with, but so I know that area, and the Netherlands, at that time, immediately after the war, they were the northern part of the Netherlands were liberated by the Canadian Army. The southern part actually was liberated much earlier, in September 44. The northern part, where the big cities were, Amsterdam, The Hague, and all of them, were in the northern part of the country, and that was not liberated. They were not liberated until May 1945, when Germany gave up the war. And so the northern part, when we were liberated by the Canadian Army, I tried, my sister knew one, and I asked that person, he was an officer and he had a jeep, and I asked him if he possibly could go to the area where she went first into hiding, and and hope to ask those people to know where she was, because they had never told me when they moved her. And anyhow, at the time, the last part of like I said, from after the southern part was liberated, the northern part not. The northern part really suffered from hunger. There was actually no fresh water. There was very, very little food, and everybody was hungry. So when the Canadians came, and especially when they stopped in the street, young girls, or young boys and girls, would surround the jeep, and they would get candy. And you know, the Canadians always made sure that there was a lot of candy. And here we stopped in this, you know, in the northern part where she was, wherever we were looking for her. We stopped. The jeep was stopped, and we were surrounded by young kids. And one of them looked at me, and she said, "Carla." So she recognized me after 2 years, which was amazing. And anyhow, so we, you know, we went to the home where she was, for the people who took care of her. They, you know, immediately let her go with me to her parents. And so here, and so many years later, we had a reunion in Holland, and there, first you see them when they're very young, and now you see them when they, about 5 years ago. They are still both alive, and I had forgotten that story, but they.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
it to me.
One thing that I challenge the Peperzak students, parents, some teachers are here. You know, Carla, you tell this story so nonchalantly, right? It's just, you tell it like you lived it, right? The challenge for us is to take a moment and think about what she's saying. Think about a war-torn country. Think about, you know, like all of this violence and activity happening. Think about what it would be like to have to be in hiding, and if you weren't in hiding, you know, you might lose your life. You know, so many of these things that you're talking about, we have a deep appreciation to hear the story directly from you, a person that lived it. But I've had to challenge myself too to like really embrace like what that must have been like for you and the people that you were helping. What happened after the liberations in
May I mention a little bit before?
Yeah.
Because the IDs I like to talk about for
Got
a
you.
moment. Is
Yep.
that okay?
Yeah, for sure.
The IDs, when people went into hiding, we tried to give them a new ID because they all had, of course, an ID with a J on it. And they were printed in England, fraudulent IDs. And the underground would receive them. There would be sometimes at night a small airplane which would drop the ID cards, and we heard when the underground heard when there would be a dropping, as we call it, through the radio, which were actually confiscated. But you know, the underground kept some radios, and there would be a code word in there. Every evening at 6 p.m. there was a broadcast in Dutch from Radio London, and they would in code say that there may be a dropping, and sometimes they dropped guns, but I had nothing to do with that. But sometimes they dropped those ID cards when we needed them, and also little machines to make the thumbprint. So they give me the ID cards and a little machine for the thumbprint. And so I could make new ID cards for the people who were in hiding. And this is one thing, eventually I helped about 40 people to go into hiding, but I made about 100 ID cards. I became pretty good at it because, you know, I had to type it in and make the thumbprint, but it, you know, so that, and one time there was a little story.
Don't get any ideas, kids.
And one time I was being interrogated by 2 Nazi officers, and I was the age that number one, I could speak fluently German, but I also was at the age that I could flirt with them. I was about 18 or 19 then, and I flirted with them, and they were taken in by that, and so the interrogation went quite well, I have to say, and they were leaving. And I was leaving too, and I had a little suitcase with the IDs in there, and with a little machine in there. And one of the officers said, "Let me carry that for you." So he carried it actually to the street where I did everything on the bicycle. Anyhow, I was very glad that they didn't open or didn't look into it, because I would not have been sitting here. And so this was the story of the ID. We also had to help him with rationing cards, and I got those also for the underground. So I got involved with the underground quite a bit. Another thing we did for they had me do for the underground, like I said, we had no radio officially, and there were the newspapers, but the information in the newspapers was only from the German side. So we would print a little sheet of paper with the Allied news. And by the way, we were very happy when Pearl Harbor happened, because we knew then America would get into the war, and that we knew that Germany could not win that war. But so that's a story on the ID cards.
Some intense times for sure. Okay, really quick. This is off script a little bit, but I'm thinking about terminology, and I don't want to assume that everybody knows the meaning of the underground as you're talking about it. So can you define, just to give us an idea, like what exactly was the underground?
Well, the good word in the States is resistance. There were people who, were trying to sabotage and do anything or everything against the Nazis to help, eventually the freedom again. So they did a lot. They did. They killed some German officers, or quite a few actually, Nazi officers. They sabotaged railroads, and anything they could think of which did not help the German war effort. And so, the part I did was then, helping people to go into hiding, and by the way, the mimeographing part of the information, and in other words, the underground is like a resistance movement, and it was resistance against the German government.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the importance of, so you heard Carla say that she helped, she hid 40 people. She saved 40 lives. I mean, that's what that means, because if you weren't in hiding, there was a great likelihood that you'd be killed, to be quite frank with you. How many people killed during the Holocaust?
And the Jewish people had to register about 160,000 people, Jewish people in the Netherlands registered. Not everybody registered, and those who did not and were not betrayed were lucky and got through the war. But the Netherlands lost, after the war there were about 25,000 Jewish people left. The Netherlands lost the highest percentage of Jewish population from all of Europe. And one of the reasons was there were what we call bounty hunters, which was paid for by the government. There were about 70 people who were specially trained. They got a weekly income, and every Jewish person they brought in, they got money for. So basically there was, it's bounty hunters. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what it was like when you found out that the war was over.
It's very hard to explain. It was so something, it was amazing. The relief one felt, and we still were hungry, but we, all of a sudden, you could do things again, and it was. It's really hard to explain, but it was exhilarating. It was wonderful.
So you got married, you started a family, you moved all over the world. During this phase of your life, did you talk much about your story?
No, I never did talk about it. It was several reasons. Maybe the main reason was that it was way too painful. The second reason was I tried to forget it and to go on with life. And forgetting was impossible. And so, my family knew, my kids, I had 4 kids, or I have 4 kids, and we never talked. I never talked about it, and so it took many, many years, like 50 or 60 years, before I started talking about it. Actually, since I moved to Spokane. I moved to Spokane in 2004 because I have a daughter here, and my husband had passed away, and so I came here, and I started. It wasn't Ferris High School, but for the very first time I spoke for a group of children, a larger group of children, was here in Spokane.
What was it that prompted you to start telling your story at that time?
Well, actually, I had a good friend, and Eva Lossman, some people may remember her or not. She was a survivor of the camp, and she would talk a lot about the camp situation and what happened to her. And she got ill and then eventually passed away, and so the schools, and I was, got to know her quite well. Sometimes in the beginning, the three of us, there was another gal who was also a survivor. We would talk together. But after Eva passed away, they asked me to do some talking, and that's how that started. Mm-hmm.
Well, we're grateful that you started telling your story.
About 18 years ago, something like that. No,
I was talking to Carla
16.
before we started here today. I was like, how many times do you think you've told your story? It's like too many to count. Well over 100.
Oh, way over 100. There were years where 30 or 40 times a year. And it's not only the schools. I think middle school is a perfect time perfect age for me to talk. But I talk to high schools and university sometimes.
Well, you have a really clear purpose for sharing your story and the history of the Holocaust. What is that purpose for you? What do you hope to accomplish?
The main reason I talk is that people know that it happened. 6 million people, 6 million Jewish people were killed, which is almost unbelievable. What is 6 million people? The state of Washington a number of years ago had 5.9 million. That means everybody in the state of Washington would have been killed for that many people. It's very hard to understand. And I think the problem was that Germany was very highly educated, very cultural advanced, their music, their literature, and it still happened in a country like that. That means that it can happen anywhere. And the main reason I talk that is the young people know about this and can work against this. If you do not follow a leader like Hitler was, their advertising, their way that they acted was so all-encompassing that people believed it. And that is what I hope that all of you will not follow somebody who wants to do the wrong thing and do it in a way that you don't even realize it is the wrong thing. You have to look into it and study what happened, and hopefully it will never happen again.
Yeah. So you have a great opportunity here.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
There's a few hundred kids here in the audience. What is one thing that you would want them to take away from learning this story about the Holocaust?
Well, that's probably not one thing, but the main thing is that you know about it, and that you know it can happen, and that it will never happen again. That you are, really observant, and that you. And I always say, the word respect, in my point of view, is very, very important. But also tolerance is important. If you can tolerate, and I hope the new school will have respect and no hatred. The hatred part is so bad too. It's bad for everybody. So, and I hope that the school will make sure that all of you won't hate, and that you respect each other, and that you learn tolerance.
Yep. Work hard and be kind. Okay, one more question, and then we'll open it up for some questions. Some students and others have called you a hero, but you reject that classification for yourself. Are there any heroes or upstanders that you look up to now?
Well, I always say teachers are my heroes. It's amazing what the teacher...
Let's give it up for the teachers. Yes. If Carla says we should respect the teachers, we should respect the teachers. Thank
Right.
you.
So
Who else?
That's my heroes.
That's your heroes. Okay. All right. I love it. I love it. Okay. I think we have a Ferris student or two that have a microphone. Is that right? We do? Oh, okay. We got them. All right. Who has a question for Ms. Peperzak? Let's go right here on the aisle, white T-shirt with an orange emblem and some lovely glasses. Here comes the microphone. What is your question?
My question is that I wonder what the Holocaust was really about, because things get messed up in history all the time.
It's a very interesting question, because the Holocaust was... The Nazi regime had decided to get rid of all the Jewish people in Western Europe, or in Europe. And that is the Holocaust. And they managed to do for 6 million people. They also killed another 5 million people from people who were, not handicapped people were killed. People who had some mental problems were killed. They wanted a perfect race. And that was the reason for the Holocaust. And it was called the Aryan race.
So anyone that didn't fit the criteria of that perfect race. Yeah. Thank you for that question, by the way. All right, let's come over to the other side. Where's our microphone person? Okay.
All the hands over there.
I'm making you run all over. Let's make it easy. Right in the back there on the aisle, the white, green, and black jacket.
Were there any spies for, like, you guys or the Jewish?
So any spies with the underground?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There were spies on the underground, but there were spies on the other side too. One of the difficulty that the Netherlands lost many people was also there were Dutch Nazis, but yeah, there were spies, definitely.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that question. Let's jump over. Just want to make sure we get representation from each section. And I'm looking at the last person in the last row right there. On your right. Yep, right there. Perfect.
How do you get ready for these speeches?
How do you get ready for your speeches?
Well, by praying, basically. It's always difficult to talk about it because all the memories. But now I do it so often that I usually remember what I want to say. So, and I like the questions because that makes it a little different. Okay.
Lots of practice. All right, let's come down this aisle, and the young lady with the pink shirt, or the young man, I don't know. What is it? Where are we? Right there. The person with the pink shirt and the really awesome hair. Sorry.
What was your life like after such a traumatic event?
What was your life like after such a traumatic event?
I met my husband almost immediately after the war, and then he got a scholarship to go to the United States, and we married so I could follow him easier. And life became, we tried to get life back to normal as soon as possible. It took a couple of years, especially in the Netherlands, food-wise, and all the different organizations had to be restarted. But it was a busy time. And like I said, I wanted to forget what happened, and that did not work, of course. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Great question. My apologies. All right, let's come around to the front, right here with the sweater and the big smile.
How long was the Holocaust?
Hitler started in Germany in 1933. And Germany was conquered in 1945, so altogether 12 years. But the war started in Germany in 1938, what they call the Crystal Night, when they attacked Jewish businesses and synagogues and started to pick up people. So it was about 12 years. So,
12 years, long time.
Yeah, it's a long
Lots
time.
of suffering. All right, right here, second row, behind the gentleman with the Seahawks hat. That's you. Yep.
Why did they go after the Jews and not other races?
Well, actually, they went after other races too. But there were many more Jews in Europe than there were other races. So they went after, it's not only the Jewish, but they made a conscious decision that they wanted to get literally rid of all the Jewish people. But the other races were also attacked. Mm-hmm.
Anyone that didn't fit the criteria
Absolutely,
of that perfect
absolutely.
race. Yeah. All right, let's go front row, Seahawks hat.
Did you lose any close friends during the Holocaust?
I lost 80% of my family. Yeah, a lot of them. And a lot of my friends too, by the way.
Yeah. That's probably why it was so hard to talk about it. Yeah. Let's come back.
That's why I can't see any movie or cannot even see the Anne Frank play.
Yeah.
But
Gosh, that's tough.
this one is anxious.
Let's go right up, and then the black sweatshirt right there, the champion sweatshirt.
What would you like us to do to help other people?
I think the number one thing is that you, like I said, respect, and that you try to help people if you can, and be aware of your fellow, of your fellow people, fellow human beings. We are all human beings. And that really means that it's not only that we look ourselves, but we try to be good. Be good, that's the main thing. And then respect and be tolerant.
I love that. Thank you for that question. You know, our school mantra is becoming my best self. That's going to be the words that are on the walls, on a T-shirt, on our signs, becoming my best self. The reason why I love that question and your response to that is that to truly become your best self, the only way you can truly become your very best self is if you're also helping others become their best self. So remember that. Okay, let's go a few rows back. I'm looking at a pink jacket. Yes, and she's so happy.
So I just want to say I think you are so amazing, and yeah, you rock. And I was just wondering, do you feel like that event helped you be such an amazing person you are today?
I do not know if it made me a better person, but I am very much aware of other people's feelings and needs. So that's probably because of that. But I think that's also by, I grew up, my parents were always very, very helpful to other people. And I had that as an example, and I hope that, you'll follow an example like that. That was wonderful.
Awesome, great questions. All right, let's come back over to the middle section. And right there on the aisle, you just stood up, then you sat back down. Now you're turning around. Yes, that's you. Yep.
Well, this is just really inspiring. I think that it's amazing how Peperzak just went through a ton of things through it, and it really inspires me. And I think if I ever get like a job as a teacher, I think I'd like to be a history teacher so I can pass on this history because it's just so inspiring.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
I didn't hear it. Well, that sounds great. I mean, I think history teachers, I love history, so history teachers are very important.
Okay, let's go around the back end. It looks like there are a couple people in the back row. Yep, right there.
How many people survived from the American planes dropping food?
Okay, actually, this, like I said, the worst of it there was what we call the hunger winter, and about 25,000 people died just from hunger. And I don't know how many survived, but from the Jewish people, less than 20,000 survived in the Netherlands, and actually they never fully recovered from what happened. Is that the answer to the question? Did I answer the question?
And then right next to him. Yep.
So, when was the scariest moment during the Holocaust for you?
What was the scariest moment for you?
There were quite a few scary moments, and maybe when I was interrogated and that I, had all the IDs in my pocket next to me. Another scary moment was that I had an aunt who was being sent to first to Westerbork and later on to camp. They all died except for when she was traveling from Rotterdam to the transfer camp. She had with 5 kids, and there was the little one, and they warned me, and I could get to the train, and I took the little one out, and then I was stopped. And fortunately, like I said, I spoke enough German, and also by this time I had a nurse's uniform, which everyone told me was sick. But then that was a very scary moment. There were many scary moments, though. I was always afraid, but that makes you very cautious, which is a good thing.
Yeah, so you've told stories before about how you had to use some trickery to keep yourself and others alive. So that the nurse's uniform
was one of them.
Was one of those. What's another story of trickery that you used to stay alive?
I can't think of anyone now, but
okay. Well, for another day.
Right?
Yeah, that's okay.
I did quite a few, but at
Yeah.
this point I can't think of it. But
Okay. All right, let's come down this aisle, and I want to try and get someone in the middle because I haven't yet. Just pick someone in the middle. There's so many hands up there; it's hard to see.
Right?
Yeah.
I just want to say your story is really inspiring, and I guarantee that when I am 50, I will still be telling your story to future generations. And
Thank you.
My question for you is, what was for you the most exciting time, directly after the war in 1945?
I think the most exciting thing was that we, all of a sudden, we were free. I mean, everybody was free, and probably the next one was the entrance of the armies into Amsterdam. That was so. Of the Allied armies, sorry, not of the German army, and that was so exciting to see the tanks rolling in and the jeeps rolling in. And they had, like I said, they had candy, they had food for us. It was, and of course also the food droppings. There was, at the last 2 weeks of the war, they dropped the food. That was also exciting. But I think probably most exciting was to have the people coming in, the armies coming in, to, for basically to rescue us. It was wonderful.
Okay. I've just been told that our time is up. Oh, I know. I hate to be the bearer of that bad news. Why didn't you tell him, Mr. Lewis? Jeez. Okay, listen up. Everybody listen, though. Thank you. First, this is our first assembly. This is our very first assembly. You guys are going to be the 6th and 7th graders next year. You did an amazing job of listening, amazing questions. I'm going to ask perhaps if it's okay with your teachers, to maybe send me an email with a few more of the students' questions. I can get those to Carla, and together we can work on getting you some responses back. So we're going to work on that. The other thing is, in just a moment, we're going to dismiss. We're going to try and do that orderly because your buses are here. You're not going to have to wait in the rain, so that's great. Again, we'll have Adams hold back since you're just walking across the street. Carla, on behalf of our students here, the students and staff at Ferris High School, I had no idea that we were going to get this today, but this is the photo that was taken before the assembly.
Okay.
So you have a keepsake now of the students, the very first students at Carla
I don't know, you
Peperzak
can't
Middle
see
School.
it from the distance, but it's very, very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
That's
guys.
amazing.